Welcome back to Just Chattin'. And these are the videos that we do on Thursday and Sunday evenings just for our own entertainment. Now, as you know, because I've shared this with you, I am currently working on establishing a timeline for the courtship of Nutmeg and Ginger. And I believe, of course, it began long before they actually met. And one of the names that came up very early in my construction of this timeline was Jessica Mulroney, the person who was purportedly Nutmeg's bestie. And if you Google Nutmeg, well, you would Google Meghan and Jessica, you will find more pictures than you can shake a stick at. So, and I'm not going to share them all with you. I will share a few. But this was a pivotal relationship in Nutmeg's life. It was part of her transition from briefcase girl on Deal or No Deal to Duchess of Sussex. So it's worth taking a look at. So when Okay, let's start with who Jessica Mulroney is. And she was from a wealthy, prominent Canadian family, Brownsteins. They founded Brown's Shoe Store. She married the son of former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, who was involved in financial scandals. So I think the less said about that one, the better. And she and her husband were considered to be, and let me make sure I get this quote right, Toronto's most polished power couple. And that was their position in Toronto society when Nutmeg entered it in 2011, when she got her job, her first steady acting job her only steady acting job, on Suits. And she met Jessica because Jessica was working out in yoga studios and Pilates studios. And of course, those were the places that Nutmeg went. I believe that she targeted Jessica as a good social connection. They met, they became besties immediately, which is Nutmeg's pattern. You know, she just love bombs people, and they just sort of fall into her arms. She seems to have a gift for that sort of thing. And we've seen that because we have been able to watch her in action on television interview programs. She can be very exuberant and enthusiastic and just take you right in. And apparently that's what happened with Jessica. In the early stages of the relationship, when they first met, it was Jessica who was the important person. She was the one who was the socially prominent person. Nutmeg was simply an actress on a cable television show. And Jessica was a stylist. She was very, very important in that world. She had a strong social media presence. She was a blogger. She was the go-to person when you wanted to know what was in, what was trendy, how you should be dressing, how you should be living your life. And subsequently, of course, Nutmeg started her own little blog, The Tig, in which she was doing very much the same thing. Jessica's influence on Nutmeg is abundantly clear when you look at the timeline and you see what Nutmeg was doing that Jessica had done before her. So the relationship was close enough for Jessica to get an invitation to the wedding, which in Nutmeg's life was like a big deal, because although she invited a lot of people to the wedding, she didn't seem to know very many of them. Not very many of her personal associations made it onto that wedding list. Jessica was one of them, and her daughter was a flower girl or junior bridesmaid or something. Nutmeg did not actually have bridesmaids. It should be no surprise to us that she was not about to share the spotlight. And I would imagine that all of the publicity that Pippa Middleton got as a result of being maid of honor at her sister's wedding probably had a lot to do with that decision to go solo on Nutmeg's part. But nevertheless, Jessica was there. Her children were involved in the wedding. And they apparently remained on cordial terms for a while, but the relationship fell apart almost as soon as Nutmeg went back to Hollywood. Knowing Nutmeg's history with relationships and friends and how people who were stepping stones were discarded when they were no longer useful, this really shouldn't be a great surprise to anyone. But there was an incident that was allegedly the catalyst for this. So that's the part that we're going to take a look at today. Jessica Mulroney, as I mentioned, was and still is a social media personality. Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all of that social media stuff and blogging and whatnot. Social media influencer, they say. And she was able to pilot that. Now, mind you, she had a lot of legitimate career credits behind her before she got involved in social media. But the social media led to television shows and sponsorships and all kinds of things like this. So it was really very productive for her. Well, in 2020, this is in early June of 2020, when pretty much the whole world was on lockdown from the pandemic, a fellow social media influencer in Toronto, a woman named Sasha Exeter, she's a Black woman, made a call, and I guess you do that by posting in your social media feed, that all the other social media people should join her in supporting Black Lives Matter. And now I've seen her videos and her posts and so on, and I don't know very much about Sasha Exeter. And one of the problems with dealing with the public persona of a social media influencer is you are seeing a small slice of them. You don't know who they are really. All you know is what they're putting in front of you in their posts and their videos. And this could be very different from who they are in reality. And I have to throw that caveat out, because in her posts and her videos, she seems to be a person who is very polarized on this subject. She speaks of global race wars and seems to take the position that if you are not actively championing the Black Lives Matter movement, you're a Klansman. I mean, it really is that extreme. I don't know if it's that extreme in her mind, if this is her reality, or if this is simply the position she takes in social media. They could be two very different things. As I say, I don't know her. So I just know that the information she has put out there is extremely polarizing. And Jessica Mulroney apparently took this call to action personally. And again, June 2020. And there was a back and forth exchange, presumably through texts, because that seems to be what has been made public. And Mulroney had come up with reasons why she was not actively supporting Black Lives Matter. I'm not sure why she felt the need to do this, because she is not obligated to do this. And not supporting any one particular cause does not necessarily mean that you're not in favor of the cause. It doesn't mean it's not the polarized situation that Sasha Exeter presents. In other words, if I don't stand up and say, I support Black Lives Matter, it doesn't mean I am having tea with the Grand Wizard of the Clan on the side. No, it just means that for whatever reason, I might not consider it appropriate, or, my advocacy is going in different directions. Who knows? But that is how it played out in the media. That because Jessica Mulroney was not anxious to support this cause publicly, that she must be a racist. I think that was very unfair. I really do. I also think that Jessica Mulroney's reaction was an overreaction and contributed just as much. In other words, I think they were both equally at fault for the chaos that ensued, which was inappropriate. And frankly, it was a media war that Jessica Mulroney lost. She ended up losing her television show over this. She lost sponsorships. And that's why I think it was stupid of her to get involved, because whenever you get involved in something like this, nobody comes out a winner. Some people lose more than others, but I think everybody loses in a situation like this. So this is where the relationship with Nutmeg comes in. Jessica Mulroney wrote a public apology to Sasha Exeter, and this is from Mulroney's Instagram. Sasha Exeter, you are right when you say, quote, this shit needs to stop. As leaders, we need to join hands and call out wrongs. I know we have different experiences, and that is something that, even in the course of a heated argument, I need to acknowledge and understand. I am unequivocally sorry for not doing that with you and for any hurt I caused. As I told you privately, I have lived a very public and personal experience with my closest friend, where race was front and center. It was deeply educational. I learned a lot from that. I promise to continue to learn and listen on how I can use my privilege to elevate and support Black voices. Well, I'm not even sure why she felt she needed to make a statement like that in the first place, but she did. The statement, of course, was resented by Nutmeg. Let's take a look at the response here. This, by the way, is from The Cut, and they are quoting another source. All of this will be in the video notes for you. Page 6 also cited sources that said Meghan felt Mulroney was, quote, benefiting, career-wise, from their friendship. Quote, I don't know what the tipping point was, but Jess has been on the outs for some time. Their friendship is definitely not what it was. And really, how can you have such a close friendship when one person is basically making a career out of the friendship? Said one source. Entertainment Tonight, meanwhile, cited a source saying it was, quote, painful for Meghan to learn of Mulroney's, quote, misguided and insensitive comments. So it appears that this social media spat, and Mulroney's, I can't be a racist, some of my best friends are black response was what Nutmeg used as the reason for dropping Mulroney. Now, we all know that she has a long history of using people, she meaning Nutmeg, using people and then dumping them when they are no longer useful. And I'm sure that that is the real source of this. Jessica Mulroney was a very useful friend when Nutmeg was just starting out in Suits, was unpolished, and Jessica, as we know, was the polished power couple, or at least half of it. This was a useful relationship to Nutmeg. But once she had achieved her goals, suddenly Toronto society was a very tiny little pond for her, no longer very useful. She is now interested in cultivating friendships with Oprah Winfrey. Yeah, she's back in LA. She wants the A-listers. And Toronto bloggers are not going to compete with Oprah. So I think it was inevitable that that relationship was at the very least going on the back burner. Mulroney handed her an excuse to dump it all together. I do find some of the things in these quotes to be interesting because, of course, Nutmeg was at one time the one who was using the relationship for her own benefit. And when she felt Jessica was doing the same, well, that was kind of intolerable, wasn't it? The fact that this all came out over a social media spat. Now, we all know that these so-called, Jessica refers to herself as leaders. We need to join hands. Leaders. She refers to herself as a leader. It's surprising. Her father-in-law was once a leader. He was Prime Minister of Canada. She's a social media stylist and blogger. She's not a leader. And if being a social media personality made you a leader, well, I would say they have to share the stage with a number of 6-year-old kids with YouTube channels playing with toys. Those are the ones with, 40, 50 million followers. They have to share the stage with the Kardashians. Are the Kardashians leaders? Come on. These are people who, in general, take themselves way too seriously. They are, to the rest of us, entertainers. We might read their blogs, but we don't read it for insight. We read it for entertainment. We read it for something to do, when we have nothing better to do. It's just ridiculous to me that these little social media feuds can be so explosive, can actually cost people jobs. That to me is absurd. Another thing that strikes me about this is that Jessica Mulroney is also a member of an oppressed minority. Now, we don't think of that because we look at her and we see a white woman, but she is a woman of European Jewish descent. And this is also a group that has been persecuted. Persecuted to the point of proposed annihilation in the Second World War. So why would two women who are from persecuted minorities square off against each other? Sasha Exeter can be angry with Jessica Mulroney for not supporting Black Lives Matter, Mulroney can look at her and say, and what have you done for Israel lately? By the way, that was a line from one of my professors in college. That was his stock line whenever something came up that he disagreed with. And what has he done for Israel lately? We all have our own causes and our own interests, our own political views. The whole world is not going to jump on our bandwagon with us simply because we want them to. It doesn't mean they are the enemies of their cause, of our cause. It doesn't mean they are out to do us harm. It just means our cause is not quite as dear to their hearts as it is to ours. That's all. So, my advice to the two of them is, boy, get over yourselves. But I did want to share this with you simply because this was a very public breakup of a friendship that the media was playing up for so long, and it was one of the few friendships that Nutmeg actually had for any length of time. Once it became of no value, goodbye. So now we have to look at the other friendships. Of course, now when you look at her friendships, it's Oprah, it's Serena Williams, it's people who she still finds to be of value because she is embracing the African-American side of her identity. Criswell predicts eventually those friendships are going to wane as well, because she does not seem to be capable of sustaining friendships for any great period of time, which is understandable, perfectly understandable, when you realize that her behavior with the people she targets as friends, and I do mean targets because she is strategic in this, she love bombs them. They are just the most important thing, and so on and so forth. And you can't sustain that indefinitely. You can't maintain many relationships like that. It's just not possible. Your attention is distracted, and you find other things in other people. So, that's one I wanted to share with you. And because I consider it to be sort of an inherently ugly story, not fun at all, I thought I would also share with you a clip. Just one. This is my teaser clip. There was a show out a couple of years ago. It was, I think it was on HBO. It was called The Young Pope, and it starred Jude Law. It was a very, very good program. If you haven't seen it, do watch it. Get a version with subtitles, because much of it is in Italian, and if you don't speak Italian, you will really miss a great deal. They came up with a sequel to it. The sequel is called The New Pope, and Jude Law was also in it, but also John Malkovich. And they have a running joke in that show about Nutmeg. So here is the first of our little clips. It's only a few seconds.
It's Meghan Markle, sir. She does not know what to wear.
What a nuisance. Tell her I'll phone her later.
Yeah. They just, it's a running joke on the show, making fun of Nutmeg. And I found that interesting because this is an HBO program, and it does tell you that whatever it is that Nutmeg would like to believe about her popularity, and whatever it is you may be reading in the American press, there's a lot of favorable press coverage out there. It is not universal. And as time goes on, I'll give you some more of these clips. I would, however, well, I can't wholeheartedly recommend The New Pope, mostly because despite the fact that Jude Law does an excellent job with an American accent, John Malkovich's British accent is nothing short of painful. And by the way, if any of you Brits want to watch this, what I would suggest is you grab a bottle of gin and you slop a lot of that in your cup of tea, because you're going to need it, because I'm not kidding when I say this accent is painful. All right, let's take a look at one of our little slideshows on the way out. And I'm working on some more slideshows in my spare time, just to give you some happy little transitions going back into our lives. I will see you all next week. Have a terrific week.